Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Quantum Spirituality right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest is Robert Lindsay Milne. Quantum spirituality, what is that? What is being a psychic? We've seen it being thrown around for a long time, but we don't always understand what an intuitive counselor is. So today we're going to be taking that wonderful discovery with Robert on, he was reading tea leaves before he could speak English. He's a Toronto native from humble beginnings, and at the age of 19, hippie psychic working at a tea house, and he has since grown and been recognized across the continent as one of the most insightful psychic intuitive counselors of his time. You will be fascinated by his work with a coma patient and how he was able to help cure a very deadly superbug infection featured in the book The Perfect Predator. And he says as long as he can remember, he has sensed things, the first feelings, the vibrations by immediate surroundings, and as he grew older, he was able to perceive and sense real, indefinable energy and vibrations from the people that he encountered. And by the time he was 9 years old, he discovered his life's calling. He didn't know what it would be called, but he knew what he was going to be doing. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. So, great.
Right back at you, right back at you. I was born this way as well.
Oh, yes.
And it's not necessarily a very easy thing, is it, as a child, especially in the past. Today, easier, but in the past, it's just that you were a strange child, because you could see things and you could tell people about things, but where did you get that from? And just people weren't kind of quite clued in.
I came from an environment where it was totally rejected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As with all religion.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no recognition of my sensitivities. I used to get into a lot of trouble for things that I said, and I never understood why. An example of that, I came home from school. I was either kindergarten or grade 1. And I said to my mother, Grandma Harris died today. Well, Grandma Harris actually was my great-grandmother. I'd only seen her once, and she lived in England. And this would have been like 1955. So news traveled very slowly.
Yeah.
And I told my mother that. She got angry, yelled at me, scolded me, and more than likely hit me for saying something that was so terrible.
Mm-hmm.
The next night at dinner, my father, mother, my sister, and I were having dinner. My mother said, Grandma Harris died yesterday. I thought my dad was going to get angry with my mother for saying bad things, and they just talked about it. And I couldn't understand. And that used to happen to me a lot. Uncle Harold, who was that woman? That wasn't Aunt Sally. That one got me hit for as well. I didn't I didn't understand what he was doing, and two, I didn't understand that no one else knew.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so that became a bit confusing for me.
Yeah, most certainly, a time. I mean, my mother was Fae, and my grandmother and a couple of aunts were Fae. So, that kind of spiritualness was there, but it was certainly not something we volunteered or talked about.
Right.
And, it was still confusing times, where if you did say something or see something, it is... You always kind of were fearful of the white coats coming to get you because, you're crazy. The white coats are going to come and get you one day. And, but you're so compelled to say it because that is that channel that you're in. You have to say it.
Well, it's simply there.
Yeah.
And it's the way you see it.
Yes.
And so that time when you were talking about me at 9, it was quite an amazing awareness for me. My dad took me to a Stanley Cup hockey game, semifinals at Toronto and Boston, and the series was tied 1-1, and the game in Toronto at the end of the third period, the score was 1-1, and then they went into the fourth, into overtime. And when the teams just came on the ice to just stretch just a little bit, I knew number 17 was going to score.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Eamon, what was his name? I knew he was going to score. Anyway, the referee blew his whistle and, called the game to get started, and all the, players went to the bench. And as they were getting ready to drop the puck, the
Mm-hmm.
Maple Leaf Gardens was packed, 18,000 people. They turned the lights down. By the way, Gary Eamon wasn't on the ice at the time. As the referee was about to drop the puck, in my mind, Gary Eamon had scored. And I jumped up, yelled and screamed in this quiet, silent building. And the entire building looked at me and my dad. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Sit down."
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down, the game started, and I just realized nobody knew.
Right. Yeah.
And I wasn't really watching the game anyway. A couple of minutes later, Eamon jumps over the boards. Red Kelly passes him the puck, and he tips the puck in the net. The building erupts. Camera, photographs, lights, people screaming, and I was looking around saying, other people, I think differently. I'm different.
Yeah.
Okay. That's from an adult's point of view.
Yeah.
From 9-year-old, as I understood why I got into trouble.
Yeah.
And then I knew what I was going to be doing with my life then at that time.
You were lucky to know it then, because there's many a psychic that I've interviewed that have always been that way, but they were compelled to go into quote the normal life and keep it quiet, don't tell anyone, and would go and do this mundane job and probably do it very well, but constantly had this calling that they didn't feel that they could follow, that they didn't have permission to follow. So you were lucky at that age of 9 knowing that that was your path. And that, you probably didn't understand what that path was, but you knew that that was, that you were different, and that was the gift that you had.
And I knew that what I had was mine, and no one could have it. And it was mine. So nobody could tell me what to do with it.
Right.
Nobody could. And it is and has been throughout my life the one thing that is totally and completely mine. And I share it very generously. However, it's always mine. And yeah. Right, you understand that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've been given the gift to give. Right, that's the thing. It's a service.
Right.
And it's
yes.
I've been a counselor all my life before I knew even what that was, even as a child. To my teachers and other people, I'd have something profound to say to them. I had no idea what I was saying, only that it's what they needed to hear in that moment. How did you know that? I don't know. Could you repeat that? No.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a problem.
Yes.
Right.
You're in the now. You're in the moment.
So throughout after that time at 9, I realized, so I certainly didn't fully understand what I had.
Right.
I knew it was different, and I don't know, should I confess this? Yes. Okay. So that hockey game started on a Thursday night. And that's, I had that realization. On Saturday, they were going to play again. And on Saturday mornings, my sister Gail and I got our allowance. It was 25 cents each. And we'd get to go to the movies, see a show, three movies, a bunch of cartoons, and you'd get a popcorn and a soda and some candy, 25 cents. And that's what Gail
Those
and
were
I
the
did.
days.
Oh, yes. So, and Gail and I would go there every week. So as I was getting my allowance from my dad, I said to him, Boston's going to win tonight. And he said, no way, or whatever the equivalent was. And I said, I bet you 25 cents they will. And he kept my quarter. And then that night he gave my quarter back and one of his. And I hustled my dad for a couple of years. Now I had to let him win because I was afraid that he would catch on. He never once caught on. And after I had done it for so long and it was so easy, I also thought that it wasn't the right thing to do, and I stopped.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing that. But it was also part of my rebellion.
Yes.
It was my way. So if you want me to do something, tell me I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So that might have been part of it. And I think once I had proven to myself once I proved to myself that I could do with my abilities what I wanted, I decided to do it things in different ways. Now I didn't exclusively hustle my dad on Saturday afternoon. I also would see people in trouble, whether it be one of my friends or even a teacher or an adult. I would say things to them and often give them information that would affect them.
Yes.
And well, once again, and I was constantly doing that. And at a young age, when people were in trouble, they often came to me. It was just the way it was.
There was kind of a double entendre, isn't it? One point they looked at you as a freak, and then when they needed you, they were right there. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I remember, I was the strange one, I was the different one, but they knew that I had answers, and it wasn't me. Sarah didn't have answers. He said I was a channeler. I channeled the answers, and I didn't know I was doing that. But it was just, the knowledge was there. I call it the knowingness when it was needed, and it was for me to pass on. And I understood that because I couldn't keep it inside of me. It had to come out. Somebody had to hear it, even if it was my
Sure.
dolls.
Right. Yeah, because you can't keep that energy in you
No.
because it's not yours.
No.
And if you do, it'll hurt you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So, you're
Because it's not
compelled to do
yours.
it. And what people do with it, you've given it to them. Now that's it now.
Right.
What they
Absolutely.
do it, whether they're mad at you or they don't like what you've had to say, the onus is off you now. You had a message for them. You gave them that message, and what they do with it is now on them.
Right.
But sometimes they like to shoot the messenger.
Right. Oh, well, not that I've ever noticed, right? So I also in my life, I came from a very abusive background, physically, emotionally, sexually. And it was a very difficult household to live in. At about 14 and a half, I ran away from home. And I lived in the streets. I lived in downtown Toronto from November to about April.
You didn't time that very well.
And however, I survived on the street. I had no intention ever of going back home. It was because the police found me and took me home. But in that time, and I went back home, And when I turned 15, I left home again and never lived at home full time ever again. Excuse me. Excuse me. When I was on when I was on the streets, I survived by my instincts,
Mm-hmm.
my psychic abilities. So my psychic abilities were formed and honed on the streets and survival.
Yeah.
And in that time, I was always offered. I had when I was in trouble, or and kids get into trouble on the street. I always had the opportunity of using my intuition, my psychic ability, or do something illegal or immoral.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always, I chose the intuitive, the psychic way. Um, there were some times where if to survive,
Yeah.
I would have had to have done something immoral. But my first choice always was my intuitions and often it was giving something to somebody and helping somebody.
Yes.
Often was part of it. So I'm just trying to. I got to stop here for a moment. So anyway, so that's how I survived throughout that time. I also heard that if you worked at the Cozy Tea Room in Toronto, you would get paid. You would, if you worked in the afternoon, you'd get a cup of tea and a sandwich and cookies, and then you'd get paid at the end of the shift. And then if you worked in the evening, you could get a hot dinner
Mm.
and cookies and tea, and you would get paid. And I applied there to work there. I couldn't read anything other than people and energy, but I survived it on the streets. So I applied and did a reading for the owner. And the way I did tea leaf readings was I'd pick the teacup up and then I would just put it in front of me and then talk to the person.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also would do card readings. Well, I didn't know about cards. I would just put them down on the table and as a kid, I was a pretty smooth talker back
Mm-hmm.
then, and so I would just talk about the cards and then intertwine it with what I was really saying with them.
Yeah.
But I really didn't pay attention to the cards. Anyway, I got hired, and that day I worked both shifts. So I got a sandwich and a cup of tea and cookies, and I got a hot dinner and a cup of tea and cookies, and I got paid for two shifts. And that night I had a place to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I had a job to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked at the Cozy Tea Room till I was about 21. And I worked there 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And some weeks, so there was an older guy there by the name of Red Hawk. His name was called Laurie Kloss. And he was the star of Toronto in those days. And Laurie liked me, so he would often get private parties on Sundays, and he would bring me along. So many weeks I would work 7 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
doing readings one after the other. And by the time I was about 21, I'd done thousands of readings. Anyway, that's how I ended up doing readings for my living. That's the way.
I'm a gypsy reader. I've never had an affinity with the tarot, but I just read ordinary cards, and they're just there, as you say, comfort for other people, but they're also sometimes in a guidance of the messaging you're getting. You know,
Sure.
so they're keeping you on track because the messaging you're getting sometimes doesn't kind of always come through coherently. And it also depends on the energy of the person that you're reading for. If they're jumbled, that's what you're kind of getting. So the cards would be a way of me kind of navigating. And I build it on top of the other to kind of get the dimensions of the message. And I don't do too many readings nowadays, too busy doing this. But I've been doing it since I was a young girl. I mean, when I was in boarding school, it got known that I could do this. And so I was,
How old were you?
well, I mean, I've been kind of reading people since the beginning of time. I was a very sickly child, so in bed a lot, and so I used to play with dead people, and I channeled and went to different dimensions all the time. And I was probably 9 or something when, when I picked up a teacup and started reading the tea leaves, and
Yes.
it wasn't, I was like, it wasn't really reading the tea leaves.
Of
It's
course, yeah, I understand.
yeah,
Yeah,
it is it is just being still in the moment and allowing, and uh,
sure.
and see what comes through. And of course, I had no idea that I was reading at that time, but it carried on. And then my mother and I moved to South Africa from England, and I remember one time as a fundraiser for the school,
Where did you go in South Africa?
Cape Town. Um, and my mother and I did a fundraiser where we were doing readings of the kids and the teachers, and what people don't realize is that how exhausting it can be. And because you are constantly having to tune into these different channels of energy, it's obviously taking energy from you as well, and it can be kind of quite tiring. So for you to do 6 days a week or longer, although sometimes the energy, if it's in the right setting, can just flow right through you and it can be rejuvenating, other times it can be really, really exhausting. And I think it depends on what energy is around you. But I know for myself that there's been a couple of readings that I wish I never had to do. One was of a young girl where there was just literally no future. None. Didn't matter which way I put it, there was nothing. The door was closed. And I just said, you're not very open today. I can't read you today. And, go home and hug your parents. And she was dead in a week. My best friend at the time. I saw her death, but I told her to go and say goodbye to her father because I said he was dying, go and say goodbye to him. And she died. And those are the kind of things that, people always say to you, oh, don't tell me about my death. I can't help what I tell you, but that I don't have to tell you you're demising. I can do it in a way that can give you the
Of course.
closed doors without telling you that. But, those are the ones that you don't ever want to have to say. But, the we don't have any control of what we see, right? Or what we
Right.
see and what we have to impart, but we
Yes.
do have control on how we present it.
Absolute, and we're responsible
Yes,
for
yes,
how we say something to
yes.
somebody. And then there's a time where well, I believe that I might know something.
Mm,
It doesn't mean that I should tell them.
right. Yeah.
Um, and I can come up with many. Um, I can come up with many examples. You were talking about South Africa. One year I had a contract with South African Broadcasting,
Hmm.
and I did a tour of South Africa, appearing on the national stations.
What year was that?
And 2003.
Okay, I'd
So
left long ago.
at the yeah, it was after apartheid.
Mm,
And so the first show that I appeared on was a show called the Felicia Show, and this woman was the equivalent of Oprah
mm,
in all of Africa. She was just like really a big time star. The show was live TV, and people were coming up to the microphone, also asking questions. And just as we were about to go to a break, I saw a woman approaching the microphone, and I said to Felicia, I whispered to her, "See that woman there? Not her."
mm,
And Felicia said, "Okay." Then I needed to get away. So when we went to a break, I just needed to get a break from the audience. And I went backstage and had a drink of water and came back and sat down. And as the director is counting down, I look over, and who do you think's at the microphone?
right.
That woman, right? And so, and Felicia directed right to her. And oh, by the way, the agreement I had with Felicia was I'll talk about anything, but no blood and guts and gore.
Right.
Right? I will not. So Felicia said, "Oh, well, you have a question for Robert." And the woman said, "Yes, my 11-year-old daughter, oh, she was a black woman, by the way. My 11-year-old daughter didn't come home 3 nights ago.
Mm,
Um, and when I saw what happened to her,
yeah,
um, there was absolutely no way
you could tell her.
I would ever
No,
tell somebody such a thing."
no.
Um, and I told her I was very sorry that I couldn't help her.
Mm,
And I held that energy in
mm.
for the rest of the show. And I wasn't right for weeks after because of holding the energy in, right?
Yes.
And I knew what I was doing at the time too. I was pretty sure what was going to happen, so.
It's also irresponsible of the host when you already said not her, because she's now looking at ratings,
Well, of
right?
course.
And it's
Oh, absolutely.
it's that have respect for the people that are doing this, um, because if you don't want to read for someone, there is a very valid reason. It's you're not picking or choosing the easy ones. There's just that some things are
Right.
private and they shouldn't be on air.
Yes.
And there's some things that you really, I mean, if it had been a private thing, you could have taken a hand and say,
Right.
this is the message. I don't know about you, but I get messages from people from beyond that, especially if they've died violently. Um, and then sometimes you can tell that message and it's comforting to them. But that is not a TV thing. That is a private thing. And that was
Absolutely.
irresponsible of the host.
Well, she was looking for some kind of blood and guts and
Yes.
gore,
Yes.
or to take advantage of somebody's misery.
Yes.
And I assure you, it would have been misery.
Yeah.
So, oh, by the way, I really have to explain the reason that I said that the woman was black is because of the area that she was from, and the likelihood of ever finding her daughter again was because of that particular environment at that time.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm
Did
just
you ever get to say anything or to the police or anything of what you've seen?
no.
So you don't even know what the outcome was.
Oh, um, yeah, the people at the show told me.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
I saw it.
Hmm.
So,
I mean,
um,
this is the thing, we don't get to choose what we see. And, people don't realize, I mean, even if you've told somebody something, there are some things that are so hard to even say, or the fact that you've seen them, that it can stay with you. It's not just a question you brush it off and on with the next. You're empathic. That means you feel. You're kinesthetic,
mhm.
and it can stay with you. And it could be very, very hard sometimes with what we do see.
Uh, um, I'm blessed with the ability to let most go.
Mm,
There's big ones that like the one I just mentioned, that will stay with me forever.
mm.
But when I finish a reading, um, I generally forget what I've said. But interestingly, when I speak with that person again and I tune into them, it almost always comes back,
You're in that channel. That's the thing.
even
Yeah.
20 years later.
Yeah.
And I remember. So sometimes if I can remember somebody's name, I do a reading for them and then bump into them the next day. If I can remember their name is a big deal,
Yes.
or that I did a reading for them.
Right.
Because I've been doing this for 56 years for my living,
Mm,
and there's been more than 100,000
mm.
connections. So I'm blessed in that it usually doesn't stay with me.
Right.
The ones that stay with me are the errors
Hmm.
when I make a mistake.
Hmm.
Or been wrong. They're the ones that will stay with me.
Have you ever had, even I had a recurring client, And
Well, I
he would
thought you were
come.
going to say nightmares,
No,
but
I've had
I
those
said,
too. I've had those too, but a recurring client that was a nightmare.
yeah,
Um, and, we would always record my reading with him.
right.
And then one day I had the recording thing wasn't working. And I said, oh, I'll try another one. And I had 3 different types of recording things in the room, and not any one of them would work. And I'd done another reading with him the week before, and he said the recording hadn't worked. And I said, look, I'm going to have to get my husband to look at why all the recording things aren't working. Call me next week, and when we'll look at setting up another time. But I reiterated what I had said to him before, that you can't avoid this path. You're at that crossroads. The choices that you make right now, then literally, you know, are the life and death. And I never heard from him again. But my husband came home, tested all of the recordings, every single one of them was working. And so it was for some reason he wasn't meant to record it. I never did hear from him again. And somewhere down the road, so somebody got a message to me that he had died, and they weren't quite sure when. But I knew he was at that crossroads and the decision that he had to make. But I don't know why the recording wouldn't work. None of the recordings would work. So you get those strange ones, and they feel kind of incomplete because, why wasn't he allowed to hear it again? And all of that.
Oh, okay. Maybe I can add to that. So when you can see something, you can change it.
Yeah,
All right. And we have free choice and free will
we do.
most of the time. Now, there is something called destiny.
Yeah.
Destiny cannot be seen or changed.
So that's the reason why it wasn't
Right.
recorded. Mhm.
That's right. It's quite interesting that you were able to do a reading for him and give him that information, and then he just disregarded it, and then it didn't get the recording.
Right.
So once again, I had a similar but different kind of experience. When Calgary, Alberta, got the Winter Olympics, it was in the '80s sometime. This young woman, I was in Toronto. This young woman came to me. It was just after the Olympics. She came to me for a reading, and it turned out that she was a producer of those games, and she rode her bicycle to my house. And I did this really fabulous reading for her, and I remember feeling great about it, and where her life was going to go, and et cetera. And then she left. The next night on the news, Lloyd Robertson did this obituary. Well, I know you're in Canada, so you know who Lloyd Robertson is.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Lloyd Robertson does this obituary. I see the picture. It's the young woman I did a reading for the day before. I was stunned. She rode her bike home, and on her way home, she got hit by a streetcar and got killed. And I thought, how could I have missed it?
Yes.
How could I? And it drove me nuts. One, my ego. I could hardly wait for the next show I was going to be on to defend that. And the other one is, what did I cause?
Mm.
What have I done? And I struggled with that for a while. And then I then thought, well, okay, we have free choice, and most times things happen at random, and then sometimes things don't. And those that are destined cannot be changed. And it was her time.
Yes. And who's to say that reading wasn't kind of necessarily in the next lifetime?
Or I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Whatever. Or could have been an alternate reality.
Yeah. Yes. Different
right?
dimensions. Mm.
Well, that's right. It could have been one of those as well.
Yes.
So, um,
Do you get readings with people where you know that whatever's going on in their life, it's got nothing to do with this lifetime. It's the past lifetime that's interfering, trying to force its agenda on the present day person?
I've never believed that theory. By the way, I've
Experienced it.
pardon, well, maybe. I've never believed that theory. Um, I believe that if such a thing were to happen, the purpose would be to experience the opposite. Okay. So here's my belief. So in the overall scheme of things, there is no right, there is no wrong.
Hmm.
There's experience,
Right.
and the rule with experience is what you do one way, you do equally the opposite. Which, by the way, karma is for every action.
Hmm.
For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So when whatever decides for us to have an incarnation, wherever that comes from, and you call it anything that you want. So a template is created, and that template is unique. Sarah, your template is unique. There is no other Sarah like you in the universe. There's no other Robert just like me. So that template contains absolutely everything that you're capable of experiencing, seeing, feeling, absolutely everything. And you have free choice and free will to experience anything you want inside the framework of the template.
Hmm.
So, for example, it's unlikely you could have played basketball in the NBA,
Right.
but you could play basketball.
Hmm.
So, okay, so you have free choice and free will to experience anything you wish inside the restriction of your temp or the boundary of your template. So you have free choice and free will there. And the only other rule is what you do one way, you'll do equally the opposite.
Hmm.
And that's how I see things. And that's I see that's the first start of our awareness. And mostly we can do whatever it is that we want after that. We have free choice. That's how I see
So
it.
we have the same template, which I know I have. I know when I first came here to the planet, um, and I have pretty well through every lifetime done this work in some form or other, right? And then I've gone through the persecution of doing this work. So all the collective lifetimes of memories that I've been through have come with me through each lifetime.
Right,
This particular lifetime for me has been a releasing of some past
right,
lifetime experiences
right,
and getting back on track of the work that I came here to do. So that's the kind of past life I'm looking at, is that you're living a life and you go, the past is being dragged forward with you. And I always say to people, when you're going to exit this world, make sure you've dealt with all your issues,
oh
right?
yeah,
You go out with a clean slate because you don't want to impose this on the next lifetime.
sure,
So
yes.
looking at it from that point of view.
And now from my point of view and in my work, and the way I think as well. I can't solve big problems.
Hmm.
I can't do anything about a war. I can't do anything about a famine. What I can do though is help that person right in front of me.
Right.
And primarily that's what my life has been about. Focusing on using my abilities, my talent, my skills, helping the person that's in front of me. I don't want. I'm not a leader. I'm very definitely not a follower. I just simply when the need is there, I do it. And I have an instinct, and you would too. My instinct is first reaction. What can I give rather than, or what can I do rather than what can I get? That's my first
Yes.
reaction, and it's how I survived on the street. It's how I've survived my whole life.
It's your core of you.
Yes,
Mhm.
and it's helping that person in front of me. For years, I never even kept records.
Mhm.
Well, of course, for years couldn't read either. So, or or write. So that also had part of it too.
The thing is, I believe that everybody is given a gift, an instrument. We're here to learn how to use that instrument to the best of our ability, and then kind of find our orchestra to go and play that beautiful instrument. We're not, I channel in a different way to the way you do, but there may be some cross channeling that we do. That doesn't make anybody's particular gift any more valuable than the other. It's just a different way of using the instrument. And
Absolutely,
we are responsible for our instrument and how we use our instrument because that's
absolutely.
our gift. The words competitive and comparison, these are very detrimental um, C words, because the moment you go into that, you're going into the protection of your own ego. You're comparing against other people, you're competing against them, and you're not being yourself. And when you are aligned with your core, which you were from a very, very young age, you knew this is what you had to do. How you were going to do it, where you were going to do it, to the extent you were going to do it was in your self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you were led to the cozy tea room where you really kind of foundated that gift and really channeled it into a way that this has been your life journey. Uh, as I say, you were very lucky to have embraced this gift so early and follow it. There are so many people that deny the gifts they're given because of society's expectations of where they should be and what they should be doing. The cosmic 2x4 comes along at some point in their life and say, are you hearing me now? This is not your path. This is where you have to go, and you have to go through the process to be true to yourself. But you're talking about the core value of yourself, where you cannot have this gift and use it in a way. People say to you, well, if you've got this gift, how come you don't haven't won the lottery, or you
It's
haven't?
not. It's not. It's not. It's not
It's got
what.
nothing to do with that, is it?
That's right.
It's not.
That's right.
That's an abuse of the gift, and it's not what the gift was given for.
Very few people could do that anyway.
Right.
I maybe no one, because that's not what the purpose of it to be used for.
Right. Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, we do have the right, um, when playing our instrument,
Mm.
to have a good living.
Yes, of course you do. Which again,
So,
some people think, well, you're spiritual. It's God's work. You shouldn't be paid. Yes, you should. You're a
well,
human being.
absolutely,
This is the gift
right.
you're giving, and you should be paid your worth.
Well, well,
Yes.
well, 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 that's right.
Yes.
And when I was about 23, after I'd left the tea room, um, I had decided that if I was going to do this work, I had to live well,
Yeah.
and I really made that deal, and it was, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to live well, and if I'm not going to live well, I'm not going to do this job,
Hmm.
and I've always lived well.
Hmm.
I was certainly not
But
opulent
that's the kind
or
of the
rich,
terms of
right?
agreements. But yeah, it's not about the riches. It's about, the living well. What does that mean? And again, society says, oh, you've got to have this big house and big car and this many likes and all of this type of thing. And that is your value. That is your worth. It is not your worth. It is not your value. You can live humbly and be living extremely well. And that's the thing is, the material things can add to the comfort and ease of your life. I certainly love beautiful things, but when those beautiful things are there to just define you, then you've lost your track of who you are. Your biggest worth is who you are from the core out.
The picture behind me is a picture. If I were doing a reading for you, that is what you would be seeing. That's a picture of the wall. And in the chair, I guess over my shoulder is where I'd be sitting. That's what it looks like. Um, that's the standard, although most of that original art was given to me,
Mm-hmm.
including that 5.5 foot carved statue of the angel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was a gift recently.
That's beautiful.
Um, yeah, it was carved in about 18,
Wow.
somewhere between 1850 and 1865, and lived in a cathedral in Belgium. And during the war, the cathedral was burned down, and some of the artifacts were saved. And that was one of them. And somehow it made it to Canada. And then a friend of mine bought it years ago, and I coveted that.
Mm-hmm.
I did, knowing that I'd never be able to ever be able to buy it. And anyway, he gave it to me as a gift, so it's really amazing.
And that's the thing. I love antiques.
Hmm.
And people say it's just old furniture, and I said no. The energy in that furniture, the
Oh,
stories in that furniture, the life in that furniture, it's undescribable. So I love history
uh,
that's in things.
about 1 million prayers had
Yeah,
been said around
yeah,
that angel, or
yes,
that angel had been around about 1 million prayers.
yeah,
Like the
yeah,
energy in that. And by the way,
yes.
it's one piece of wood except for the wings. All
Mm,
one. So and the energy out of that is absolutely is overwhelming. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Right.
We're very much in a throwaway society where everything needs to be new and this and that. And is that I think one of the things that we don't have in life is appreciation or gratitude. And if we stopped and breathed, we talked before the show about me just becoming a grandma, and I do a show every week myself, and I just did a piece on the beauty of birth. And if we look at how difficult it is and how long it takes to bring a child into the world, and then the years of bringing that child, if we looked at that beautiful gift, could we, in that beautiful state of love, ever do any harm to that child? And it's the rebirth of ourselves that we have over and over again. It's where does this hate come from? Where does this discord come from? And I believe it comes from a disconnect from our heart and soul.
Um, yes. And what would make that disconnect happen would be somewhere in the DNA, someone
Mm,
was abused.
yes.
And from that being to the next generation to the generation after that. And each generation improves upon that violent dysfunction.
I agree.
There,
Yeah.
there has in all my life, I've never met a parent, including a parent who beat their children. I never met a parent. Actually, I met a bunch of those. I never met a parent whose goal was to hurt their children.
Right.
That was never what they planned.
No.
So at this stage in my life, what I can say is something went wrong. They didn't mean they wouldn't have done that.
Right.
Something went wrong, and it usually is we do what we've been shown.
Yeah. I have a series called the Forgotten Children series, and a Forgotten Children series book coming out soon. And I firmly believe, for all the counseling and coaching I've done for the years and the shows, that there are so many of us with an injured child inside. And that injured
That
child is,
that do this work.
sorry?
I said, are you referring to people that do this kind of work? There's an injured child.
Well, the injured child is, whether the child has been neglected or
Of course, of
abused or
course.
forgotten. But we all have a child inside of us that at some point was not listened to, or was abused, or was hurt.
Right.
And that child, it creates the dysfunctional adult. because we're not
Of course.
taught to go in and heal that child.
Absolutely.
And if we did, then we would be more aware of our actions. And as you said, that knowledge of that we don't go out to hurt a child, but we do because that's what we know inside of ourselves. And if we dealt with what was inside of ourselves, it would be a different reaction with our own children.
About 15 years ago, maybe a little longer, I was doing a reading for a woman, and in her reading, it came out that she was a little harsh with her children, and so remember my background. I survived being beaten with a rubber hose and skipping rope on the bareback. So there's some issues with that for me.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm doing a reading for this woman, and then I realized she'd hit her kids, and by the way, when I tune into someone, if I do, and there's maybe reasons why I won't or can't. One of them is when I start to tune in to someone, if I'm unable to feel love for them, I'm not able to do a reading. Now I can find someone or encounter someone who's a scuzzbag, but as I connect with them, I can see, I can feel a love for that person's being, and I can connect and be pretty objective and accepting, not agreeing with any of the things that they've done, but accepting of them. So with this woman, I was seeing her in that light. And I brought up her hitting her children, and I asked her how that she did it. And she told me that she used a paddle. And I asked her how old her children were. And, there was like a 7-year-old and an 8 or a 12. And I said, why do you need to have a weapon to control your children? You're much bigger than them already. And I said, why do you hit them with it? And she said, because it hurts my hand when I hit them with my bare hand. And then I said to her, had you ever considered that it hurt their bums with your bare hand? And the light went on.
Yeah. She didn't associate that she was inflicting pain.
And she started to cry. Yeah. So I've seen things like that.
Yeah. Again,
sometimes you just got to get your hands dirty. You have to do that.
Well, that's the thing. You're given what you're given to tell them what they need to know, and sometimes what they need to know is a realization of something they're doing that is wrong. You are just the messenger, right? It is a form of counseling, spiritual counseling. That's what I was a spiritual counselor, and I could only pass on what was given to me, what the message that you really needed to know. I could always interject more skills and tools that maybe could help them through that. But it's this is a direct link from the divine, whichever you want to call it, God, source, energy, whatever you want to call it. And it's a message for people to help them see or understand or know where to go, or sometimes it's just a comfort. And I hate the terminology fortune teller.
Oh, well, yeah. Good way to not get a reading from me.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a reader, I'm just a reader, by God's design. And it's and I use it in different ways now.
I excuse me, I have to challenge that. I think that while perhaps in your thinking God created the opportunity, you're the one that did the work.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I think you're giving God a little bit more credit than yourself, and the reason that you're doing as well as you're doing is because you've done the work.
True.
Right.
It's a meeting, isn't it? I've done the
Right.
human work so that the spiritual work,
And
you
my
know.
dear mother used to say, "The good Lord." Sorry, I just forgot. She used to say, um, ah, I forgot it. How
It's going to come to you in a moment when you don't think about it.
it'll come
Yes.
it'll come to me in a moment. But oh yes, the good Lord helps them that help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, we do need to help ourselves. We do need to be selfish to the point of being abundant in our own selves,
I
because that's when our
I
cup runneth over.
I think that like a gardener would love all the plants to do well. I think that if a branch or a tree died or a bush died or a plant died, the gardener would know in himself they created that life, um, and that's just the way it happens. I think that God would be more like that.
Hmm.
Like the gardener.
Well, I mean, aren't we all gardeners in some sense? We're
Well,
all
yeah.
planting a seed, we're all watering that
Well, I
seed,
use that example
Hmm.
just that we would be detached from it, although not.
Yeah,
Okay.
it all
It
depends,
would,
but yeah,
yeah, we would be detached from it because knowing that's the cycle, and feeling that, oh, too bad it didn't live longer, but it wouldn't be like a big deal.
right. Hmm. I mean, there is,
Because because you never know what was coming next. So what
no.
what happens here, right? Um, then gets balanced out
Hmm.
anyway.
I mean, some people say, well, if you trust in the faith and you step out into the abyss, blind, deaf, and dumb in order to see, hear, and feel, you're just in God's hands. Allow, and I agree to allowing to a great deal, but there's nothing wrong in having a psychic or a reader show you the options. You're a map reader. You're able to say, this is a good path, that isn't a good path, or pay attention to this person, whatever the case is. It is just another skill and another tool to help you on your journey of life. It's not sitting back and waiting for Amazon spirit to bring to you, but it is another tool and skill in your life that can help you navigate through your own life with a little more clarity.
Um, like any counselor, like any
Hmm.
helper,
Yeah,
whether it be a doctor, whether it be a chiropractor, whether it be a massage therapist, whether it be a school teacher, that's part of our journey, learning all these things.
exactly. And it's just another way of just helping ourselves to understand the path that we're taking. Now, tell me, what path led you to the perfect predator? A scientist raced to save her husband.
Well, I've been a psychic and working for a long, long time. And Stephanie Strate is has a PhD in epidemiology. She's a professor at California State University or Southern California University, and she's the associate dean of that department. And her husband Tom is also has a PhD in experimental psychology. He has a doctorate, a PhD in psychiatry, and there's a couple other PhDs. And he also is a professor there and associate dean of his department. I first did a reading for Stephanie just just as she finished her PhD, and that was over 30 years ago. And she had kept in touch with me, and I had done readings quite regularly for her. And a little, so a few years ago, and I had done a few readings for Tom as well, her husband, and um, they were planning to go away on their they were going away on their dream vacation. A year before, I had done a reading for Tom, and Tom, I would describe it like he's like 6'5", and he's in his 60s now or 70s now, and he's reminded me of a real life Indiana Jones type character. And when he was on research in South America, he got kidnapped by the Sandinistas and was held captive and almost starved to death. And
Oh my God.
he's gone in safaris and fought lions and in Africa, like really stuff that he's done. He's like that kind of guy. Anyway, he had ballooned up to over 300 pounds. And I was doing a reading for him. And I mentioned to him that there were some difficulties happening in organs that are lower in his body. And I said, now, in about 2 years from now, perhaps 3, you're going to be more than 100 pounds lighter. And then I said, before that, what I've talked with you about in your stomach, there's going to be a really serious illness, and you will be as close to dying as you can without dying. Mm-hmm. And then you will live and you lose 100 pounds. And then I said, I'm not sure your destiny is being sick. I'm thinking your destiny is losing 100 pounds. So it's up to you. You can listen to what I've said and take control, or wait until you lose control. You can do it the easy way or the hard way. And they were my words. I was a little softer than that, even with them. And it scared him for a week. You know, he lived on lettuce and grapes for a week, and it didn't change. Year later, Tom and Stephanie are on their one of their dream vacations, and they're in Egypt, and they've been touring the pyramids, and Tom's starting to get sick, like really sick, and he gets some kind of infection. Then he passes out inside one of the pyramids.
Wow.
Then he goes to the hospital, and it turns out that he's got, I don't know what the hell this is. It's called a pseudocyst on his pancreas. It's supposed to be really serious. Then what happens in Egypt, he catches the most potent superbug on the planet. And it was 100% antibiotic resistant.
Oh, wow.
That meant if you get it, you die.
Right.
Tom was medevac to Germany, and Stephanie went along, of course. And now I had been a relatively close counselor with Stephanie throughout the years. So we had a good relationship. And I'm often, sense my clients, if something's going on, I usually know when I'm going to hear from them. I don't reach out to them. People have to reach out to me. I don't reach out. But so anyway, they get medevac to Germany. And by the way, this is in the book too. Stephanie finally contacts me. And this was during Christmas, by the way. Stephanie contacts me, and I had the worst flu ever in my life during that time. So I was a little bit grouchy too. And she called on Skype, and I said to her, I've been waiting for you. What took you so long? Mm-hmm. But I meant it though, because I had been. And anyway, she told me what was going on. And from that day onward, and I told her, by the way, Tom wasn't going to die. And from that day onward, at first I thought that my job was to watch over and take care of Stephanie. But I realized that part of my job was also to take care of Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the real fabulous stuff comes in. I made a mental link with Tom when he was in a coma. And I knew what was going on with him 24/7. I knew that he was going to live. I visualized a candle. When the flame was strong, and that was Tom's life force, I knew he was okay. He
Yeah.
wasn't dying, right? He was sick, but I knew he wasn't dying. When the candle flickered, I knew he was getting into trouble. I knew when his energy changed. As time wore on, I understood when his energy changed, how it changed. I was able to understand it would have something to do with his heart rate, or it would have something to do with some other blood levels. And then I got to the point where I was anticipating stuff like that. And then I got to the point when I was describing and not, see, I don't have any background in medical things. So I was describing things in the way I see them and using my terminology and my slang. And again, in the book, what also turned out is that I was often about 3 days ahead of the doctors. And what would happen is when the doctors were explaining things to Stephanie, they would use the same expression that I would have used. Right. When one time I said to Stephanie, now, Stephanie, you really have to look after yourself. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. The specialist said to used the very same analogy to her. And things like that happened all through that period. Now, I also have to, make it clear, I'm not the star of the show. Okay, I'm not the star. I had a role. And the role that I played, had it not been played by somebody, Tom would have died. Okay, he would have died. And there were 3 times for sure. But I'm still not the star. I'm still like, I'm part of the process. So Stephanie decided that she wanted to. Another example of with Tom, when I talked about the flame, that there was one time I saw the flame, like the flame was flickering, like really flickering, and I said to Stephanie, Tom has to see his children. He's cold, he's in the dark, he doesn't know where he is, he's sick, he hurts, and he's letting go. He needs to see his children. And Stephanie said, well, when? I said, yesterday was a good day. Today is a good day. Tomorrow's not so good. And if you wait later, don't bother. That night, his daughters showed up. And there was a marked improvement in Tom's being, Tom's state. And he writes about not exactly how I'm describing it, but he writes about what he was going through at that time, and then his daughters arrived.
Right.
And what's significant about that, because Tom's a scientist too,
right?
And what's significant about, and a guy who's a doctor of psychiatry, he believes now that sometimes when people are in comas, they can hear. It's irrefutable. He did. And the psychic brought it out, and Tom is verifying it. The patient lived. So that was conduit. Yes. So I knew where he was at and what was going on, and I lived that way for 24/7 for months. And also, there was an energy link from him to me, where I was sending energy to him 24/7, and I was wearing out because I was living this 24/7 as well.
Yeah.
And anyways, there was one point where Stephanie said, "We have this friend who's a healer, and we're going to get him to help." Next day, having a meeting with Stephanie, I just said, "What was that?" Something just happened with Tom. write down the time. Something really important happened. And Stephanie thought I was telling her Tom died. And what had happened was Martin had tuned into Tom at that very moment. And that was the very first time I ever met somebody doing that kind of work. That was just, wow, I've never done that before. And Martin knew that I was there too, which was just absolute. I'd never experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Stephanie decided that she was going to find the cure. And this is a collaborative group of scientists around the world looking for the cure for this superbug. Nobody had ever survived it. Let's see. And by the way, a lot of the doctors thought Tom was going to die. He went into septic shock 7 times.
Wow.
He was really sick. And anyway, Stephanie narrowed it down to 3 different ones. And by the way, I had meetings with her every day. Mm-hmm. And she brought up the random by me, and I wasn't the only one giving information. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said, she has scientists and experts from everywhere in the world. And she told me she had 3 that she was going to choose. And there was only a chance you had to get the right one, or Tom didn't have enough. She says to me, I've narrowed it down. The first one is something called phages. I'd never heard anything about that. And I just said, that's the one. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, let me tell you about the other 2. And I just said, well, that's the one. And she said, please, let me tell you about the other 2. And she told me about the other 2. And I said, the first one. And she said, why? Mm-hmm. And I said, because it looks like little Pac-Man going after the superbug and eating it. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of them. And she said, that's exactly what it does. Uh-huh. And on that, plus all the scientific research, she made her decision. Phages. Phages experiments were done in Russia in the 1930s and through the late 20s, 30s, and into the very early 40s. And they were curing bowel and intestinal illnesses by injecting phages into the body. Phages in modern day comes from sewer water and its excrement. And what they were doing back in those days in Russia was injecting raw excrement into people's bodies. And the theory was that the healthy bacteria would kill the bad bacteria. Mm-hmm. And there was a considerable amount of research done, and there was some success. And then penicillin came along. Mm-hmm. And then you know people had to have the choice of a turd or a pill, and they took the pill. And that was the end of that study. And since there's been antibiotic-resistant superbugs coming along, they started doing phage research. So that's how it happened. And a collaboration of scientists, as well as the American Navy, the American Army, the FDA, all got together, created a miracle. Tom was injected. He was about 3-5 hours away from death. Mm-hmm. He was injected with phages, and within like 2 or 3 moments, his vital signs started to get stronger. And then like an hour later, they injected him again. He got stronger and stronger. And the next morning when Stephanie was with him, he had been injected, and this guy had been in a coma for months. He came out of his coma and looked at her, saw her, and then fell asleep, not a coma. And he never went back into a coma again. And it was the phage therapy. It changed the world's way of treating some diseases.
Right.
It's always one of those cases, isn't it? You know, and the thing is, the science is absolutely wonderful, but you need that intuitiveness. And the fact that you were kind of working with Tom and you were kind of proceeding.
It wasn't kinda, I was.
Yeah,
I lived
exactly.
it. And
But
it
you were
took,
proceeding kind of, you were a step ahead.
right,
And so in being a step ahead, you can kind of let them know, what was
absolutely,
coming up.
absolutely.
So, and for scientists to work with people like yourself,
Right.
a lot of scientists now realize that people who are of spiritual nature are just working on a totally different frequency. They can measure the hertz in which you're working on, and they understand it from that scientific point of view.
Sure,
A lot of scientists wouldn't work
sure.
with other people. It's the science or nothing. But merging the two, now you've got the whole picture and you've got the whole energy behind it.
Well, I was so aware of that, and at the very beginning, I realized the position that I was given, and what was absolutely amazing about this is Stephanie has the memory of like Sheldon Cooper, and it's unbelievably, and every day she would critique me of what I had been saying, like, and I always knew I was good. Um, that event caused me to rise to the greatest that I'd ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, everybody that was involved reached higher level, higher state in their profession.
Well, I mean, that was really kind of what it was about,
Yes.
right?
And I was really humbled
Mm-hmm.
when I never made any big errors. They were always really small, minor ones. I
Mm-hmm.
never missed any of the big stuff. And I was getting that feedback every day. It was the greatest learning experience of my life. It didn't come free.
Right.
It took a huge amount out of my body
Yes.
for more than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And my equilibrium was thrown off. I had 3 terrible falls. I fell back. I was carrying a dog down the stairs. I fell backwards and I broke 4 ribs.
Wow.
And then just after that, I was running with one of my dogs and I tripped and fell and broke my shoulder. And then, like 6 weeks later, I tripped and fell and bashed my head on the floor. And then, like a month later, 2 months after that, I got hit. I got rear-ended in a car accident. So my body went through terrible hits,
You needed someone
and
to realign you.
as well as I lived through some of the most powerful times of PTSD that I'd
Mm.
ever experienced.
Well, you'd been in his body, feeling what he was feeling, right?
Right,
So,
right,
I mean, obviously, you two of you can talk and totally relate to one another afterwards, right? Because you were
right.
there. It wasn't
That's
a
right.
question you were witnessing it, you were
No, I was,
feeling
I
it.
was,
You were
I
going
was
through
there.
it with him.
I never realized that was what was going on.
Right.
And it wasn't until, Tom, Stephanie, and I appeared on a podcast. We never got together, the 3 of us, and talked about
Mm.
what we went through. And it was during that podcast when I was hearing about Tom's PTSD afterwards, I thought, that's what I was living through that
Yeah.
year. It was a real commitment on my part.
Mm.
Um,
Well, you were immersed in it. And
yeah,
as I said, you were the conduit, you were the person that kind of say, you're on the right track, you're on the wrong track. This is what I'm
that's
seeing.
right. That's
But
right.
you weren't just the observer, you were literally feeling what he
I
was
was,
going through.
I was, that's right.
So, I mean, this is, one of the, they say, with a healer, that they have to be extremely careful in, is that you're going into the body to help heal it or observe it, but you've got to make sure when you come out that you leave it behind. And of course, you hadn't been trained in that. Your path
And
had been totally
right,
different.
that's right. And the other thing is that I'd never experienced that,
Mm.
and I didn't expect that I would. It just all of a sudden happened.
Yeah.
Okay, it was like, here's the job. It's take it or leave it.
Yeah.
It was one of those, and I'm really glad that I did. And what I went through if somebody would have said to me, okay, you're going to have the greatest learning experience of your life. You're going to learn more about your awareness. You're going to expand your awareness greater than at any other time. But this is what you're going to go through after. I
Yeah.
would have took it.
Yeah.
I would have done it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that life is about experience. As you said, every single person involved with that was heightened by the experience.
Absolutely.
Every single body's, gift became, more profound and more poignant. And, that's the thing. Sometimes it's the resistance is futile. You need to go through this, however confusing or detached it feels at the time, because it will be explained later.
Sure.
You were doing it for a friend. You were doing it because there was a need there, but you had no idea, what the end result, not only what it did to you physically, but also
Uh-huh.
the elevation of understanding and even opening up your channels to an even greater level.
Absolutely. But it's changed the way the world
Yeah.
has started treating
Right.
many things,
Yes.
including cancers. Now they're doing experiments with another substance that's capable of attacking a cancerous tumor and eating it.
Yeah.
And that research started as a result of the phages.
Right.
To be a part of something like
Yes.
that is such a blessing, like a privilege. And I got the call. It was anybody could have got it, but it was just I guess it was my turn,
It
right?
was your number, right? They
That's
got your
right.
number.
I got that's right. My number came up. There were there's a lot of people in the world that could have done that. I just lucked out.
And that's the thing about it is, I've had some extraordinary experiences, and the thing is not to question them. You're going through them for a reason. You don't even go the why while you're going through it. At the end, the epiphany will happen, and sometimes it's not straight away. As you said, like, it's only when you're on that podcast that you heard what he was saying that you realize that's what I'm going through.
Yeah,
I
that's
lived
right.
what you were living. I was in there, mate.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
but it also, as I said, beyond the fact of what has happened with the science and the spiritual world, the particular drug now that is now being used in other things, it's opened you up even more in your channeling, because that's what you are as a reader. You're channeling to even to greater lengths and greater depths, and it's actually, it can be a curse, but it is a gift. The curse is the year that you had to go through, because it's really, really, really important that your equilibrium is in balance. And it's very easy for a psychic's balance out, when you have an experience that can throw you out. And so you needed someone to help put you back into balance there.
Right.
And that means that sometimes as a psychic, you have to take time out and say, no, this is me time. I can't do anything for you until I've rectified me.
Well, I worked during that time, but my body was in too much pain. I had to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And once again, while I didn't actually know what the side effects would be, I never really had an experience like that.
Right.
I didn't consider it. So it was all, as I said, it was all, one day, every day was a new experience.
Yeah.
And I was prepared in my awareness of how to do it. I wasn't necessarily prepared in the experience of taking care of me while I was doing it.
Right. Yeah.
I did, but minor league stuff.
Yeah.
But because I'd never done anything that big before.
And most healers
in that way.
Right. And most healers are going into the situation and may work with someone for a short period. They're coming out and doing what they need to do. You were immersed in it for a year.
Right.
Right.
Oh yeah, lived it every day.
Exactly. So,
Walked
there was no kind of
night.
time out, you were there all the time. So
I walked the floors at night.
Yeah.
And as I said, Stephanie had 24/7 access to it. And one time she called me. I was walking through. Have you ever been to Toronto? I know
Yes, I
you're
have.
on.
I tried living there, but the minus
Didn't work
36 I couldn't do. So
in
yes, you're right.
Toronto. Well, you must have been here on a bad day. That doesn't happen very often. But so we have the Toronto Islands. And I was trying to remember why I was going to talk about the Toronto Island. I forgot now. Okay, it'll come to me again. I forgot. It was something about what we were talking about, but I just forgot now. Anyway, it'll come back.
Yes, it'll come back when it needs to. Um,
That's right.
the fact also that you didn't just go through the experience, it wasn't just the science and everybody that was involved that had, great learnings from this. But it was also the fact that you've now put it in a book. And this
Well,
book,
I didn't. It's not my book. It's Stephanie and Tom's book, and they write it, and they had a writer work with them as
mhm,
well. And this what isn't a self-published book. This was
mhm,
by a big publishing company, and they won awards for that book, and it's like a heavyweight book.
yeah.
I only get to be mentioned in it about 26 times or something.
Well, I mean,
But
just look at how that's opened up because we as human beings kind of think, oh, I don't know what to do because there isn't any information. And then when something like this comes up and you open up and there's a
absolutely,
realization, there's a connection,
absolutely,
there is,
absolutely.
I firmly believe there is always an answer. And it is,
Right.
are we ready to listen? Are we ready to go through what we need to go through to find what that answer is? And what does that answer mean when we do find it? How do we apply it? And, it's less about getting stuck in the question and being willing to go through the experience to discover what the answer is.
Yes. Okay. I agree with that. The other experience that was very much different is that my connections with people are generally quite short. So
Yeah.
people come to me for a reading, and somebody comes to me regularly for a reading, but not every day, and certainly not every day for a year.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so I've never had that
Yeah.
experience. Most people just come to me, and I work with them, and then they leave. I had never had that same connection like I'd had with
Yeah. And also with the short readings, you can shake it off. When you're
right,
immersed in something for a year and you're literally feeling his pain and everything he's going through, there is no shaking it off. You
that's
were in
right.
it. You were in the
Yeah,
mix. And so
yeah.
yeah, I mean it takes a while to come out of that. I've had a few experiences I shouldn't have had, and it kind of shakes you up. And it takes a
Mhm.
while to kind of get that equilibrium. But what I do understand though is the equilibrium. I'm also one that has had some ridiculous falls, you know, and I know I'm out of sync. I'm out of
Right,
balance, not just physically,
right.
emotionally, spiritually. And you have to do whatever you need to do to get back into alignment because otherwise, you're gonna keep tripping. More ways than one.
And well, what we talked about, or what I spoke about earlier, I haven't really been focused on consciously becoming more spiritual or evolving. What I've just been focusing on is giving service and helping that person in the moment.
Yes.
And it isn't just limited to when I do readings.
Hmm.
It's a whole part of my life, giving service. And one of the ways I survived on the street was helping other kids
Yeah.
on the street. And for example, I would go to a restaurant and ask if I could wash dishes for something to eat. And I would always get something to eat, and then I would start sharing it with people, and then they would be around me. So I was constantly caring for people, even as a child.
Yeah.
It's just my instinct.
Yeah.
It's my calling.
Yeah. And
That's
you
what
can't,
I've been focused on.
right?
Nothing much beyond it.
Hmm. And you would
Well,
certainly
not
take them
exactly.
beyond it here, but
Yeah.
that's the thing too. There was probably a message to you is that, don't limit yourself to what you do and do well. It was time to expand out and see what more you can do.
Sure.
All right. So we're always given those lessons. It's
Hmm.
I'm a person that I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to give it a try. And if it's meant to be, it will be. And if it doesn't, then it was just a lesson learned along the way.
What I've been learning since I've been doing podcasts, and Michelle encouraged me
Hmm.
to do, and from I think August 11th and I was in semi-retirement because a big part of my career was traveling and appearing on radio and TV shows around the world, and I just stopped doing that. And Michelle encouraged me that I should. And I tried doing a show once, and I thought that was great. And so since August 11th to now, which is I think it's about 31 weeks, I've been on 26 podcasts
Yeah.
talking about all the stuff that we're talking about. It's really wonderful.
And what it does for people who are listening is that we're in a wake up time. The third dimension has literally been severed, and we're in a wake up time where people need to wake up to this beautiful energy out there. They need to wake up to the abilities that they have. They need to wake up to their contribution, connecting with the heart, soul, and their spirit. And the more that people like yourself talk about it, this wasn't an occupation you chose, it was chosen for you, right, from birth. And this was the path that you listened to. You didn't go off on another path of expectation. That's probably because you left home,
Right.
right? You
Yeah.
chose your own path. You listened into the path and the gift that was given to you. Had you stayed at home, no, you've got to go to university, you've got to go and do this, you've got to go and do that. And people go off on the you've got us instead of following their path. The fact that you've done it for so long, has been because you listened and you paid attention. And what we're
Hmm.
asking people to do right now, please pay attention to that gift that's tapping you on the shoulder. Please open up to the wonders of that energy, to the possibilities and the incredibilities that are out there, because they're there to be experienced. Don't be afraid. Don't let the supernatural movies scare you into what really, how beautifully divine that spiritual love really is and what it means to us as a human nation, as a society.
Yes, I agree.
So that's why you're doing all these podcasts.
That's
It's an
right. That's right.
education.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is that what's been so special about them is I realizing how much I know, and that's been great. That's been a lot of fun. Becoming aware of how much I know. Well, actually, I still know a whole lot more that I'm not really in touch with yet, or back in touch with yet, and that's been fun.
And it will come out as it needs to, right? And that's the thing is,
Yes.
when you are a channeler, when you're doing a read, you're in doing your thing, and as I said, you come out of it. But every single time you're doing something, it's more knowledge that's layering and layering and
Right.
layering, and you don't really understand the magnitude of the knowledge that you really have until it's called upon. And you're being called upon right now to share that knowledge because it is an enlightenment for others, for other people who maybe have become psychics and readers, for other people of needing healers, for other people who are really needing to understand that the messages are always there. You just need to find the person who can see them and get them to you.
Right. Um, that's right. So many people tell me I'm a channeler. I don't really care if I am or I'm not, right? I really don't. I would say no, I'm not, but maybe I am. Maybe because once again, I'm focused on what's in front of me.
Yeah.
So um, when I do a reading, interestingly enough, I tell people don't interrupt me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do a reading, I start off the exact same way. I start off saying the date. And the reason I say the dates is because I move forward and backward in time so much during the day, I sometimes lose track of where I am.
Right.
And when I do a reading for somebody, I often see their life from conception to completion. And once again, I'm going backward and forward, and I lose track of where I am. So I start off with a date. And I only ask the person two questions. How old are you now? And what month is your next birthday? I don't want to know what day. I just want to know the year they were born and how many years they have, so that I can find where they are in time.
Right.
So I start off and I say the person's name, the date, their name, my name. And then I start off with saying, and then I say, here we are today in March 30th, 2021, psychic reading 4. And then I have one other thing I say, and then I just start with the reading. And I just start off. And sometimes I will start talking about the future, but other times I'll talk about the past. And I'm constantly moving forward and backward. And when I'm dealing with somebody who is in a really serious crisis, what I do is I go forward in time, say to about when they're 83. From the position of age 83, I look back through their life and I describe to them what they feel at 83 about how they're handling the situation that they're in and how they feel about it later. And I'm not sure I know anybody that does that, but what that
unique.
does is tell somebody, you made it.
Yeah.
You're safe. No matter where you are, no matter how scared, no matter how deep, no matter how long you've been underwater, you made it. And what I've also learned to do in my work is I tell somebody something to their ability to believe it.
Yeah.
Because if I tell them something they don't believe, it'll never happen.
Right.
Because they don't believe it.
Yeah.
So what I do is I look at something and tell them to that degree of in that level of their belief.
Yeah.
After I demonstrate that, then I talk about, however, if you stay on that path, this could be, and that keeps it fresh in their in their thinking, rather than oh, I could never do that.
Yeah.
I show them they can, and then I show them, and after, if you want, you can keep going, and that's how I give information. And I often describe to somebody right now what they were going through when something was happening to them at 6 years old. I'll first of all talk to them about that age, and then I'll come back to now, and then I'll talk about what they were experiencing at that time as well. And that's often my concept in how I see time. And what I've learned is to, when people are coming to me, they're often frightened and their mind is frozen. And what I do right away is get them to start looking at something past the now and into the future. And as soon as you can get them thinking about the future, their brain slows down and they start to relax.
Yeah. How do people get a reading from you?
I mean, how would, oh, well, they can just contact me on my website, and contact me. I handle a lot of the apartments. I have an assistant now because I've gotten so busy again. But call me on contact me on my website. It's robertlindsay.milne.com, and then we'll set up a reading.
And Robert Lindsay is an easy name to remember, but Milne
Milne, yeah.
is Milne.
Like in the guy who wrote Winnie the Pooh.
All right. Any relation?
An eighth cousin, 3 times removed or something. But
Right.
I was the Scottish side. He's the English side.
All
Not
right.
that there's a difference.
No. As I say, I don't do too many readings anymore because I am very immersed in this, and it comes out in a different way now. But I understand the benefits of it. I understand how it's helped so many people, because very often we're so caught up in the emotion of the now that there is no form of clarity or ability to see any steps moving forward. And somebody who has that ability to read and look at the past, look at the future, look at the now, they can show you the possibilities and the steps and moving forward. As is very often, you're a map reader and they've got to walk it. All you're doing is telling them what their options are. What they do with it is up to them. Right?
Absolutely, that's correct.
It isn't like, oh, you told me this and it hasn't happened yet. No, I told you what was possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's your action that's going to make it probable.
Absolutely. And I explain to people, I say, if I had my choice, I would like to talk to you, and there's only wonderful things going on in your life, and I really wish the best for you.
Yeah.
And I really want you to make all the correct decisions. But what I want for you is irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's my job to give you the information for you to decide what you want to experience.
Exactly. You're just giving them some clarity.
Absolutely.
From there, they make their own choice.
Absolutely.
Right? That's simple as that.
And I make that very clear, and I hold very little guilt for the last 20 years of my work, since I fully understood that concept.
Mm-hmm.
The other 36, there might be some tinges of guilt back there somewhere.
The thing is, don't shoot the messenger. You're there, you can see the bigger picture. You can tell them what it is, what steps would be favorable, but they have got to walk them in their own clarity. And then with that information, it's then their choice of what they do with it. Don't come back and shoot the messenger. Don't sit back and wait for the Amazon delivery. It is for you to be proactive in your own life. But you just have the ability of being able to show them what is beneficial for them, that clarity, so they can make a better choice and take the right steps forward. And that's how I always looked upon my readings for. This wasn't the paint by numbers. You go and do, or this is going to happen and all of that. This is the possibility. But these are the steps that you need to take to live up to that possibility. And it's up to you whether you walk them or not. And that is a whole responsibility of everything.
How does that come through? How do you see that? No, you, Mike, I'm asking you from like one professional to another. How do you see that in your head, or do you?
You mean, how do I see how it's laid out?
Yeah, well, what you were, discussing the information that you were giving to people. How do you see it? Where does it happen here? Does it just here?
It's like a movie.
It is
Yeah.
Where is the movie playing?
Wherever their scene is. I mean, it's coming to me visually and audibly, and sometimes, and I never get a verbal message without a visual message with it. So it's almost like they're always in a scene somewhere. I am seeing them in a scene somewhere. Sometimes I can see an entire movie. Sometimes it's just scenes from the movie, but I'm always seeing them in a setting.
In seeing it, is it knowing what it would look like, but have it as a feeling.
When it's somebody giving me a message for someone, it's
Yeah.
their vision of what they want the others to see.
Okay.
When I'm reading for someone, you know what it's like. You can see where they're at right now, and it's
Right.
confusion and chaos. You can see where those possibilities are of that clarity. I can give them the visual of what is there.
Right. Do
So
you have the visual of it, or
for me,
can
I can't
it's
actually,
words?
I can't hear the auditory without the
Right.
visual. It's a
Okay.
package deal with me.
Oh, okay.
So
All
it's
right.
never just words. It's always a visual with the words.
For me, it's generally knowing.
Yeah, it is, but it is a knowingness that transforms through the eyes lens and the
I not
auditory.
I don't necessarily actually see.
Mm,
I just simply know.
yeah.
When I tune in, the words come through. Now the other thing is that when I'm doing readings, and I ask people, please don't interrupt me, because
Yes, you're in a flow.
what I'm saying isn't necessarily what I'm thinking about.
Mm,
What I'm thinking about and what I'm saying are often different.
right.
So what I'm saying is already thought about, and
Mm,
what I am about to say is being processed.
yeah.
And at this stage is so. For me, imagine four TV screens on the wall, each one having a different channel.
Yeah.
So one channel is what I've said. Another one is what I'm about to say. The other one is what I'm thinking about long term. And the fourth one could be, what am I thinking about I'm going to do after the reading?
Yeah.
And they're all playing at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yes. Yeah. I understand that one very,
You
very
do?
well. Yeah. And I've
Okay.
also, as a feeler, as an
Yeah.
empath, a
Yeah.
kinesthetic, I'm actually feeling what I'm saying and seeing and everything
Yes.
as well. So,
Yes.
if it is something that's painful to see, I'm feeling that pain along with it.
Absolutely. Me too.
But I have to
I'm
shift
feeling it as well.
forward to
Yes,
see how
that's
to get
correct.
out of that pain and,
Right.
the different picture.
Right.
And, yeah, and as you said, it goes backwards, forwards, thiswards. There is no, beginning, middle, and the end. It gives you in
Right.
snippets that you also have to make sense of. So I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it, I'm feeling it,
Yeah.
and I'm not thinking it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you see, I'm conscious and thinking of it. Now, my personality is different to a degree when I'm doing readings, but not extremely different. But I wish I could always be in that state, because that is when I
Yeah,
am at my best. Um,
in your truth.
yeah, and
Yes.
it's a tough place to be all the time,
Yeah.
but it's quite glorious.
Yes.
I forgot what I was going to say about that too. There was something else.
Well,
What
it's
was
so
it?
peaceful in there too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's your own clarity.
Yes. So when I'm doing readings, I forgot what I was going to say. It was something, but whatever. There was. I've been thinking about. It's really nice to speak with you, because I don't usually talk with someone that knows how we do it, and like the way I asked you about how you were seeing it.
Mm.
I was just curious, since how it is somewhat similar.
Yeah, I mean, I call it the knowingness. What I need to know when I need
Sure.
to know it. It's when I engage, my soul and my heart resonates with it. My spirit goes into action, and the mind will know what it needs to know when it needs to know it. And when I'm ever channeling and in that form of reading, Sarah's not thinking at all. Everything that's coming
Okay.
out of me is channeling what I'm seeing. I'm relating.
Okay.
Right. And so Sarah's not really there. I mean, I'm there, I'm conscious, but it's not
Right.
my thoughts, it's not my perception. It might be my perception of understanding what I'm seeing that I can relate, but very often it's just what I am seeing, I am relating. Um, but
Yeah, I understand.
yeah, there's no intellectualism in there. It's all intuitive. It's the divine intellect, not the academic.
Okay. Um, remember what I said just before we went on the air. Um, we do the same thing. We just talk about it
Yes.
differently.
Yeah.
You know, I was, yeah, we do it the same way. We just talk about it differently. It
Yeah.
was, and similar concepts
Mm.
too, which has been nice to
Yeah.
experience.
And as I
And it
said, I do it
not
in
be
a
a
different way now.
competition.
Oh, comparison and competition. I don't want to hear those words. Don't want to hear them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, this is my instrument. That's your instrument. You know,
Well,
very
yeah,
often we play the same tune, but we may play
right,
from a different, or we may play the same instrument in a different
right.
way. Neither one is
Yeah,
wrong. It is just a different piece of music.
that will other people will relate to.
Yes.
Yeah, um, I wrote something on my website recently. In doing some podcasts, I've heard the words charlatan
Hmm.
and fraudulent a lot. And it's been my experience, and I've met a lot of people that do this work. I haven't met very many frauds. There is the occasional one, but most people that do this work genuinely believe that they're doing good.
Yes.
It's just that not everybody plays in the NBA. That's
Exactly.
all, right? Not
Yes.
everybody makes it into the big leagues.
Right.
You know, there's got to be minor league players. So there are some that aren't very good. Now, that would be not fraudulent. That would just be lousy at doing readings,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, what do readings cost? $20, $50, $100, $200, $300. Well, so the person does a lousy reading, even if they're having a bad day, they're not very good, they're stupid. Regardless, it's not fraud. It's a lousy reading.
Yeah. Exactly.
And everybody has a lousy day at work.
Exactly. And you know, I've interviewed many a person who may be a channel or people that speak through them or do readings in a different way. That is their way. You know, that is their style. I can't do their style. I don't do it that way. I do Sarah. You know, I do what's being given to me as you do what's being given to you. And it really comes down to, who do you relate to? Who do you feel a
Well,
synergy with? Where's
exactly
that
right.
energy connection? You know?
So for example, being psychic has nothing to do with being intelligent.
Right.
It comes from a very different part of your brain.
Absolutely.
You can be really stupid and be psychic,
Oh, I mean, as
right?
far as my education is concerned, I am, because I
Well,
never finished school
I
and you know,
I think with
academically,
kindred spirits,
yeah.
I think in kindred spirits in that category too.
Mm,
You know, I completed grade 8. You know, I had 3 months of high school. That was, you know, I
yeah.
my only grad. Yeah, so I can relate to that. But there are some psychics who are smart, some are okay, some are stupid. Well, somebody who's really smart would have a lot of trouble
Mm,
tuning in and connecting to somebody who's stupid
yeah.
because you don't see things on the same level
Right. Exactly.
from the same
The energies
perspective.
don't match.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I got to be careful I don't get into trouble about this. So people, birds of a feather flock together. So
Yeah.
those that can work with this type, they're around that give service.
Yeah,
And
and it's the energy begets energy. When you feel someone's
right,
energy, you feel a synergy. That means you're open to
absolutely,
receive. You can't work with
absolutely,
people whose energy is just, you know, no matter if
absolutely,
coming to you closed off because of, you know, out of fear
absolutely,
is different, but coming to you completely registering on a total different frequency,
absolutely,
right? You
absolutely.
know, how do you channel in? How do you tune in to that
And
wavelength?
and it is numerically
Yeah.
impossible to be able to relate to everybody.
Yes.
In fact, about 25% of the world's population you actually have absolutely nothing in common with.
Right.
Nothing. But then there's the 25% of the population that you have tons of things in common
Yes.
with too. So Maharishi says, speak, well, I'll do it more modern, speak to the person in the language they understand.
Exactly. Yes.
And sometimes you may not be able to speak that language.
Yeah. I'm a true colors coach. That is the four different perspectives, of understanding. And I always try and represent it the best way I can. But I know there's certain languages that I can't honor
Absolutely.
because, I am far too much emphasis over there, and I can speak utterly and truly in this. If I'm speaking in the
Yep.
other, you are going to get the respect, and you're going to get as much as I can give you. But you're not going to get the whole of me, because you won't
Absolutely.
get the whole of me.
The whole of it.
Right?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly. And, just because someone has the money to pay me for a reading doesn't guarantee that they get a reading.
Yeah.
And I, if I don't think I'm doing the absolute best that I can, I don't do the reading. I don't do it. If I'm in the midst of a reading and I don't think it's my best, I stop.
Yeah.
And if I've done a reading and I don't think it's my best, I won't give the person their reading, the recording, but I also won't take their money.
Right.
And
Yeah.
from the time I started on my own, when I left the tea room, up until today, I've guaranteed that my readings, absolutely. And what that means is that if from when I do a reading for somebody, from the time I do that reading till the ending of my life or theirs, hopefully theirs first, if for whatever reason they feel I did not give them a good service,
Mhm.
and my service was of value, I used to say, "Give me back the tape," but I just say, "I'll give you back your money." Now you don't get 2021's money. You
Yeah.
get, if you had a reading in
Yes.
1968,
Yeah.
you're getting the $2.50.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
There are, just because we live in the spiritual world doesn't mean we're not, actually, practical in the
Right.
human world,
That
So
doesn't
yeah.
mean we're stupid. That's
Yeah,
right.
and that's, I think
Right.
that's another thing very much, people who have chosen this possible path has chosen them. Just because they're a spiritual being doesn't mean they've abstained from being a human being and having human necessities. A lot of people think, well, you're spiritual, so therefore you shouldn't be paid. How can you charge for those services? God gave it to you, it should be free. Human being needs
Well,
roof over the head, needs food in the stomach.
well,
God gave me this gift as my
well,
job, and so
right.
as my job I should be paid for it.
So the way I answer a question like that is I talk about Tom Brady,
Mm,
the football player. And I say to the person, do you believe that Brady has a God-given gift to play football and to be the best quarterback in history? Do you believe that's a gift? And they'll say yes. Well, what's the difference between
yeah.
the gift that I have than what Brady has? We both are making a living
Mm,
from our God-given gift.
yes, I'm still waiting to make a living from mine.
Yes, well, I've also noticed that when the focus for me of making money, I often lose it.
Yeah, I just have to surrender to that. And, I believe I'm an incredibly enriched and abundant person, and one day the bank account will match. I have to just
Right.
trust that, I'm given the tools and the skills in order to make that money. But, what money is there, and what is to come to me will come to me, when as needed.
Well,
So,
once again, I think I talked about this at the beginning of our session. I made a deal with the universe,
mhm,
and I said, if I'm going to do this
yeah.
work, now, um, there's never been a time I've done this part time.
Hmm.
And when I was about 21, when I left the tea room, I heard that if a young man, when he becomes a priest, when he gets ordained, he vows to say a mass every day of his life.
Mm,
So I decided to make that kind of commitment to my work.
mm.
And I vowed that I would either do a psychic reading or practice being psychic every day of my
Yeah.
life. I made it for about little over 30 years
Hmm.
without missing a day of
Hmm.
practice or doing readings. And sometimes on a day that I would have off, if somebody phoned, there's a good chance they could have come in to see me for a reading because it's better to do it than practice it.
Right,
So
yes.
sometimes I've been several months booked up. If I answered the phone and I want to practice, that person gets the reading, right? So
Mm,
instead of me practicing, and I went more than 30 years without missing a day.
right, excellent.
Um, and I did because I wanted to feel like I wanted to know what it felt like to not do it.
Yeah. The thing is, with a gift like this, in whichever way you use it, I transferred my energies to podcasting. It's now 9 years that I've
Hmm.
been doing this. So my energy and in my counseling, my channeling all goes through here now. Um, the thing is, when we're given any form of this type of gift, any gift that you're given, it's a responsibility behind it. So you've always got to keep it fine-tuned. You've always got to keep it open and honest and true. Don't get caught up in the ego or the anything else that's not going to serve you. But when it comes down to it, we're here to be of service. And really, the greatest gift we get is when we have been of service to someone that it's changed their lives. In any form of, even if it's just put a smile on their face, that's a gift back to you in itself.
Absolutely.
So you
Absolutely.
can't fight that. You can't argue with that. It's that smile that you've put on someone's face, that joy of that heart ignition. It just is so utterly payment in itself. So the only thing
I
with the
was
universe, you've got to be very clear on what kind of payment you want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You have to be
Yes.
clear.
Yes.
One time several years ago, because of life circumstances, I got into a debate with um, a right wing minister, born again type. And we were respectful and civil to one another. And we were having lunch. And the reason for we were is because my best friend, near the end of his life, got very much into Christianity
Mm,
without giving up his belief in the other things. And this was the church that he was going to, and they respected him there. And the minister and I went out for lunch. This was in Calgary, and we went out for lunch. And I talked about what I believe in and my values and stuff. And he was sitting there listening to me, and he said, "How can you have these values and not be a Christian?" And I said to the guy, "You Christians don't have the market on
mm,
credibility, integrity. You
mm,
you don't have the market cornered in God.
yeah.
We all have values." So we talked some more, and then he said, "Well," and I talked about some of the things that I've done, and he said, "Yes, you've done these things," and he said, "But it doesn't matter that you've done them. It matters that in whose name you do them, meaning doing it in Lord Jesus,
Yeah.
doing it in his name." And then we continued talking to some more. And he told me that he was, going to go to hell or whatever. And he questioned because I wouldn't believe in. Sorry, he questioned that I didn't do it in Jesus' name. And I said to him at the end, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If it's really true, on the day of our death, when we go to the pearly gates and St. Peter is there going through our good deeds and our bad deeds, if that really is true, I'll take the Pepsi challenge with you any day."
Yeah, I mean,
You
you
know?
know, I wrote an article a long time ago to thy own church be true, and I am not an advocate of religion. because I look upon it as control and limited, but I'm a huge advocate of faith.
I believe,
And whether you
yes, of
call
course.
it God, universal spirit, or energy, it is about that connection. And
Right.
as you said, the church doesn't have a handle on the direct connection. We have a direct connection. We don't have to go through anyone.
And everybody's connection is their own connection in their
Yes.
own way.
Yes.
And there's no wrong way,
No. No.
right?
No.
And so we all have our own, we may have some similar drawings, but we will always see them from our own perspective.
Yeah.
And in the overall scheme of things, there is no right, there is no wrong, there's experience.
Exactly. And the bottom line is just simply, I like the Don Ruse, 4 agreements. Speak your word with integrity. Don't take things personally. That's somebody else's
Well, that's a
issue. Don't
good
take
one.
it
Yeah.
on. Uh,
Yeah.
don't assume, because until you know the story, how do you know? And then
Absolutely.
simply do your best based on what you think is your best, not somebody else's dictation of what it should be.
Right.
And
That's
therefore,
right.
simple agreements that if you live by those, then you're just not going to get yourselves, caught up in a twist. On
That's
that note,
true.
my dear, so people can get the book from
That's
Amazon.
called yes, you can. My website, there is a direct link to the book.
Excellent. And your
Okay.
website again
Is
is?
is is robertlindsymilne.com.
And it's Milne
Right.
for your surname. And of course, they can find you on Facebook, Robert Lindsay Mill, and
Absolutely.
on Instagram,
And
it's
on Instagram now, I've gotten Facebook going pretty good, and now Instagram is the next one to conquer.
right. And yeah, Instagram is definitely a conquer thing. It's not one. I don't want to do things by phone.
Yeah, actually, that's an issue for me too.
Yes, yes.
One of the biggest mistakes of my career, not accepting the world had changed, that was changing into everyone carrying a cell phone,
Yeah.
and I biggest error of my career.
Yeah, I mean, if you had told me, in fact, actually, 2010, I was involved in an electric motor development. And I went to a reader and she said, you're going to do something online that's going to save lives and it's going to be international and this is your calling. And I thought, how does the motor fit into that? And the motor, there was nothing wrong with the motor technology, but we got taken. And, the world flattened out and I got given a redirect. And then 9 years ago, April 4th, I started my first podcast on somebody else's channel before I went to my own and just discovered this was it for me. Everything that I'd ever experienced, everything I'd ever done, this was now the platform. And so we have to embrace those redirects. And, if you told me I'm going to be running an online podcast, doing all the editing and everything else, it would be, no, I can't do that. And the thing is, we don't know what we can do until we try or till we have to.
At this time in my life, like as I said, I've been doing reading my job for 56 years.
Mm-hmm.
What we have done today, 50 years ago,
Right.
is science fiction and a miracle.
Exactly.
Right?
Twilight Zone.
And in my lifetime, I've seen that happen to our work.
Yeah.
Every day is a brand new experience for me. Every day I go to work, I'm doing something that's a miracle.
Yeah.
Every day, it's incredible.
I know. But, that's the thing about life. We're meant to be adventurers. We're meant to be explorers. We're meant to live in wonderment, in exploration. That's what, gets us up every day. What's today going to be, and look at it as an adventure. And, sometimes it might be a blah day, got to do admin, but, that's okay. It's building the foundation for another springboard tomorrow. But gratitude, most certainly, that is a huge one that we need to have in our hearts and souls every day. And a sense of wonderment of what is to come.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing here today, Robert.
Thank you.
It's been an
Um,
absolute delight having you on.
Thank you very much. 5 minutes off camera.
Yes, most certainly. So we're going to
Thank you.
say goodbye to you now. And remember, everybody who does these readings still, you can reach out to him through his website. And just sometimes having that reading is just a wonderful clarity of where you're at, what possibilities are to go forward, so you can just make the right decision in life. It's not walking it for you. It's not a prediction of la. It is about seeing something in clarity so you can make better choices in life. So don't be afraid to reach out to Robert, okay? And just to trust your own intuition and your own soul, because the answers are always there. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.